Well, since my topic is freedom and security, I would like to speak about the notion of freedom. Freedom may be understood in general as an anthropological notion, as that capability of every one of us, to choose one's proper decision, one's life, one's behavior, without any intervention, without any pressure of anyone, any individual means, or even the intervention of the state. So in this regard, this is a very general term, very general understanding, which is out of the legal understanding itself. It is more general. It has to be called rather liberty and not freedom. My great professor, Riyad bin Ashur, says that this is inherent to the human being, yes, and if you would like to understand liberty or freedom, you'd rather ask the very secret nature of the human being itself. So this is some kind which is part of the nature of the human being. Yes? It is. Now, if we achieve the objective of protecting and guaranteeing this liberty, not given, be careful, guaranteeing, protecting this, guaranteeing this to every one of us in a society, so this is in the expressions of my professor, Slim Al-Aghbani, the biggest manifestation of the state. أكبر تمظهر للدولة. So, are we really living in a state? I don't want you to answer. Now, if we would like to understand the freedom from a legal point of view, which is more concerning us, I think, because we are not living in a jungle, but we are living in a supposed state, so the legal understanding of the freedom will be not a general definition, perhaps. It is a set of freedoms rather than a general definition of a freedom. Different freedoms given to us or recognized by the legal rule. That's why we can find individual freedoms like freedom of thought, freedom of expression, and I will not give my course of law, and collective freedoms like freedom of association, for example. So, in order to guarantee and to protect these freedoms, the state will not give you something, will only restrain from intervening, restrain from violating, and also has to protect you against any violation coming from another individual. So this is the freedom. However, in practice, this will encounter a great big problem, which is the conciliation between freedom on the one hand and other exigencies coming perhaps from other rights, because freedom is not right, therefore so right. Rights are not freedoms, therefore so right, but freedoms are rights. If there is an exigency of conciliation between right and freedom, so we need some technical solutions. And I have to speak legally. I'm sorry. Because when you conciliate between the freedom and another right, there will be some kind of limit to the freedom itself. And here we can speak, for example, and principally about the relationship between freedom and security. You have to conciliate, for example, between freedom and security. But what is security? If we suppose that security is the fact of not being in a danger or feeling a danger or being risking something which is very bad, like an accident, robbery, etc. The state of spirit of feeling injured, secured, safe, not feeling like risking something, feeling calm. This is the status of security. If we suppose that this is security, so what is the problem of the relation between security and freedom? I think that this is a very ambiguous relationship. Because on the one hand, We need security in order to be free, to enjoy our freedoms. But on the other hand, if the state tries to make the society secure, perhaps there will be a limit to the freedom. The difference between both, let's say, the relation between both, needs some kind of a fine distinction in order to make that conciliation without hurting and violating the freedoms, without becoming an absolute regime, like certainly Tunisians remember the 23 years of Ben Ali, with all my respect to all those who have some good feelings to that period of time, for sure, for that famous feeling of security without any rights and freedoms that you may have in your heart. So this is the ambiguous relationship. How to resolve the problem? I think that resolving the problem of conciliating between security and the freedoms needs to take really, as a state, the responsibility of some challenges related to the different freedoms, and I will take some examples of freedoms, not all the freedoms. It's not an enumeration. I will take only some examples. So to every freedom, I will try to make you know what is the risk. I will not expose solutions. I share with you my feeling. I am afraid because I feel that freedoms are really undermined by this very big exigency of security in the context of terrorism, and especially related to the anti-terrorist acts existing in all over the world, and especially the draft of law of Tunisia related to the anti-terrorist act, which is not already voted. But we will speak about it. So first of all, we speak about, for example, the right to the freedom of speech, the right to the freedom of thought, of religion, combined. Freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of religion. Every Tunisian remembers before the 14th of January that many people were persecuted just because they were freely practicing their religion. So the state didn't make the difference between the freedom of the religion and the terrorists or the terrorist attacks or apology of terrorism, for example, or inciting people on terrorism. How to make the balance between security and freedom of religion, speech, thought, knowing that these rights are really crucial to the advance of the society. And if you don't permit to the people to think freely, perhaps we will never make progress. Remember the story of Galileo, for example. He was killed, executed, just because he said that the earth is round, it turns on itself. It was a scientific truth. You may consider it simple, but in that period of time, it was opposing the general truth given by the church to the people. So he didn't have the right to the freedom of thought, to the difference in his way of reasoning, of thinking, or of research. And that's why he was executed. So in order to realize a real progress in the society, you have to give to the people the freedom of thought in order to discover, to make a process, to understand, to write, to speak, to make people share with you your ideas. You may be a genius. You may discover something before the others discover, so you share it with your people, with your society. You may be different, you may represent a minority, but if you express your idea to the people, perhaps you will become one day a majority. And I take another example from the Muslim countries related to the freedom of thought and religion at the same time. Those who are reasoning differently from the common understanding of the Islamic religion, those who are considered as progressives, for the other side are considered as atheists. So if you don't give to your people in your society the freedom of thought and the freedom of religion, so those people may be killed also. So there is a big risk here, and by the name of security we may kill people and justify that by the pretext of security. Do you see the importance of this relationship between both? So how will we be able to conciliate between security and freedom of speech? because when you think, you speak and you express yourself, so I will take the freedom of speech. What's the problem of the freedom of speech in its relation with security? The problem is its conflict with the exigency or the duty of non-apology of terrorism. Because sometimes, when you express your ideas, you seem like encouraging or inciting people to become terrorists or to commit terrorist attack. So there is a problem here related to security, which is called a crime of apology or inciting people to commit terrorist attacks, which is conflicting with the right to the freedom of speech. I think that there are three conditions that must make this a crime of apology, glorification, or incitement to terrorism. First of all, the subjective intention to incite people on terrorism. You have to prove it. Second, you should find some kind of communication of acts, okay? And third, the objective, real, effective risk on inciting people on terrorism. You have to read all the anti-terrorist acts. You will not usually find these three conditions, in addition to another condition, which is the independent judicial power, which has to control the good application of these conditions. And you know really that in our world, third world especially, we don't have really that independent judiciary and that non-corrupted judiciary. So you understand, I guess, here the risk. A second example, the freedom of association. Don't you see here that the exigency of security may give a pretext to the state in order to restrict the right to associations, political parties, labor unions? All these freedoms are undermined by this exigency of security. So in order to guarantee not to violate these rights, I think that a prior law should determine in precision, in details, what are the conditions in order to consider such a community, such an assembly, as a terrorist group or committing a terrorist attack. And it has to be also under the supervision of an independent judiciary in conformity with what we call in law proportionality and necessity. Means that the interdiction should be proportional to the risk and should be needed really. If it is not needed, it is not considered as justified by the security aim, and this has been taken, this was the position of the Constitutional Court of France, which is called the Constitutional Council, when he eliminated a law because it wasn't really guaranteeing security and respecting proportionality and necessity. I don't think that the new application of this law in Tunisia, before the existence of the Constitutional Court itself, will be really efficient and will not be risky for the freedoms. I will summarize, and I will take the last example I tried to speak about because it's the most important in my appreciation as for the Tunisian example, which is security in anti-terrorist act may undermine the whole freedom of the individual in Tunisia. Through what? Through the non-respect of the procedural right of the accused person. When you are detaining before the trial, the pre-trial detention means before the trial you can be kept in the police office. I inform you that in our criminal procedure, criminal law, قانون الجنائي الانترنال العادي, we used to accept 3 days of pre-trial detention. And they are renewable only on the basis of an authorization of the prosecutor, which is called General Procurer of the Republic, only once. Means in general only 6 days. We have some guarantees, like you have the right to meet a doctor, you have the right to inform your family, you have the right to be informed by your charges, etc. However, in the Anti-Terrorist Act draft, and not act, it wasn't adopted yet, we have the right to make you 15 days waiting for your destiny in custody before the trial, without informing your family, without the right to a lawyer, without the right to a doctor, without the right of anything. You are within the hands of the noble policemen and women. They can make whatever they want with you. They can abuse because of a personal vengeance, personal interest, for example. So I would like at the end of this, because I know still not much time, I would like to ask myself, ask you and every human being, is it fair enough to make all the society and every one of us pay the price of the crime of several people committing terrorist attacks in this way? Because every one of us may be arrested in the street, detained for 15 days, and after that, it is legal. The difference between previous regime and the new regime will be that this act is becoming legal on the basis of a law voted in the parliament and not arbitrary. And the second question I would like to ask you, if this will be on the basis of a law voted in the parliament, so it is permanent, it is not a temporary circumstance, so when will we become free? Because this is a limitation of freedom, and it should be temporary, but it is not. So when will we become free? And I think that I can find the answer in a citation I took from a speech given by Thomas Jefferson, the President of the United States. He was also a philosopher of the 19th century, and it's a paradox, because he's coming from the state who had first the idea of the Anti-Terrorist Act, and all of us, we know about the US Patriot Act, Guantanamo, and all the violations of human rights, torture, etc. So Thomas Jefferson, what did he say? He said, a people willing to sacrifice a little freedom for a little security deserves neither one, neither the other.